My boyfriend told his friends I was nobody. 6 months later, his own habit of pretending people didn't matter cost him his future. Ray and I were together for 2 years and 3 months. In that time, I cooked for him almost every night because he said my food was the only thing that kept him going after 12-hour shifts at the warehouse. I drove him to and from work for 4 straight months when his car broke down. I sat with him at my dining table 3 nights a week for over a year, helping him study for his electrician's license. I paid his phone bill for 6 months when he fell behind. I bought him work boots twice. I never asked him to pay me back because I thought we were building something together. Then one Saturday, he invited me to a barbecue at his friend Keith's place. It was the first time he had brought me around his circle. I spent an hour getting ready because I wanted to make a good impression. We pulled up and Keith's backyard was full. Maybe 15 people. Most of them Ray's friends I had never met. Keith came over and introduced himself, then pointed at me and asked Ray if this was the girlfriend he had been hearing about. Ray didn't even look at me. He said, "Nah, she's just a girl from around the way. She needed a ride, so I brought her through." Keith looked confused because Ray had his hand on the small of my back when we walked in not 30 seconds earlier, but he didn't push it. He just nodded and walked away. I stood there waiting for Ray to correct himself or laugh it off. He didn't. He walked straight to the grill and started talking to someone else like I wasn't even standing there. For the next 3 hours, I sat on a lawn chair near the fence by myself. At one point, a girl named Angie sat down next to him on the porch steps, and he leaned into her conversation for 45 minutes. When she got up to leave, he hugged her and told her she should come hang out more often, loud enough for the whole yard to hear. On the drive home, I asked him why he told Keith I wasn't his girlfriend. He said his friends would give him a hard time about it. He said I wasn't the type of girl you show off to your boys. He said most of his friends were with girls who looked a certain way and he didn't want to deal with their comments. I asked him if he was embarrassed of me. He told me I was twisting his words. He said I should be grateful he even brought me at all. I told him we were done. He looked at me like I had just told him I didn't want takeout for dinner. He said fine. That was it. 2 years and 3 months and everything I got back was one word. I sat in my car in front of his apartment for a few minutes after he got out, waiting to see if he would come back down or text me from upstairs. He didn't. The lights in his window came on and his shadow moved past the blinds and that was the whole goodbye. He didn't call me the next day. He didn't call the day after that either. I packed a small box of his things, the work boots he kept at my place, and the charger he left in my hallway outlet, and a hoodie that still smelled like him, and dropped it off on his porch while he was at work. He never mentioned it. What happened after that had nothing to do with me. I didn't arrange any of it. I didn't even hear about most of it until months later through a mutual friend named Dylan, who worked at the same company. Ray passed his electrician's license about 5 weeks after we broke up. He passed it because I had spent over a year going through practice tests with him until he could get through them clean. He got hired at a real electrical contracting company almost right away, and the only reason that happened was because a senior electrician named Frank had been mentoring warehouse workers on the side and personally recommended Ray to the hiring manager. Frank drove with him to job sites on his days off, walked him through inspections step by step, caught his mistakes before any supervisor could see them, and told management Ray had real potential and deserved a spot on the apprenticeship track. That track could lead to foreman within 3 years. About 4 months in, the company held their annual dinner. Frank brought Ray as his guest because apprentices didn't normally get invited. During the dinner, one of the project managers walked over and asked Ray how he was adjusting. Ray said he was doing great, and the work came naturally to him. The project manager smiled and said Frank must be one hell of a mentor. Ray shrugged and said Frank showed him a couple things early on, but honestly most of what he knew he had picked up on his own from studying. Frank was sitting 3 chairs down at the same table. He didn't say a word. He didn't make a scene. He just stopped. The following Monday, Frank requested a different apprentice. After that, Ray lost way more than just a guy showing him the ropes. Frank had been his entire safety net from day one. He was the one catching Ray's mistakes before any supervisor could see them, walking him through code details you couldn't find in any textbook, vouching for him in review meetings. All of that disappeared on a Monday morning. 2 weeks later, Ray got assigned his first solo residential inspection and signed off on it like he knew what he was doing. The same project manager from the dinner reviewed it afterward and flagged 3 separate code violations, 3, on one inspection. He walked up to Ray on the job site and said, "Didn't Frank walk you through residential inspections already?" Ray looked him in the face and said, "I told you. I taught myself most of this." The project manager just stared at him for a few seconds, then turned around and walked away. The next week, Ray tried to fix things with Frank directly. He sat down across from him in the break room and said, "Hey, I think there was some kind of mix-up with the apprentice reassignment." Frank didn't look up from his coffee. He said, "No mix-up. I requested it." Ray asked why. Frank took a slow sip and said, "You already know everything. You said so yourself. You don't need me." Then he went back to his coffee. Ray walked out of that break room and went straight to Dylan. He laughed the whole thing off. He said, "Old guys get sensitive when you don't kiss the ring." Dylan told him that wasn't what happened. He said Ray had embarrassed Frank in front of people who respected him. Ray didn't even blink. He said, "All I said was I learned on my own." That's basically true. Dylan said, "Frank drove you to job sites on his days off, Ray. And I want you to sit with that for a second because I know exactly what that feels like. I spent over a year at my dining table helping Ray study 3 nights a week. Frank spent his days off teaching him things nobody was paying him to teach. And both of us got the same answer. I learned on my own. That's basically true." The apprenticeship track required a quarterly performance review signed off by a supervising journeyman. Frank had been that person for Ray. Now Frank wasn't just unwilling to do it. He had walked away completely. So Ray needed to find another senior electrician willing to take him on. He started asking around. Nobody said yes. Word had gotten around fast about what Ray said at that dinner. Electricians talk. Frank had been at that company for years and had trained a lot of the staff. When Ray came around asking for someone new to sponsor him, those same people had already made up their minds. One of the journeymen said it right to Ray's face. Ray walked up to him during a break and asked if he'd take over as his mentor. The guy looked at him and said, "I heard you don't need mentors, so figure it out." Ray didn't have an answer. He just stood there while the guy went back to work. He was standing in the middle of a company full of experienced tradesmen, and not a single one of them wanted anything to do with him. Not because he was bad at the work, because he had looked at the one person who gave him everything and told a room full of people that person didn't matter. When Dylan told me that part, I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling. Not because because I was happy, because I recognized it. Ray did to Frank exactly what he did to me. Without a journeyman sponsor, Ray's review was 6 weeks out and there was nobody willing to sign off on his progress. Dylan said Ray's response was to just work harder. He started picking up double shifts, like if he could put in enough hours, the problem would fix itself. But the harder he pushed, the more mistakes started showing up. Dylan said Ray was working on a commercial panel one afternoon and reversed a polarity. A reversed polarity on a commercial panel can start a fire. Ray's supervisor caught it before anything happened, but it didn't matter. He pulled Ray in, sat him down, and wrote him up formally. Dylan walked over after and sat down next to him on a stack of supply boxes. He said, "You need to go talk to Frank. Apologize. Tell him you were wrong at that dinner." Ray didn't take a second to think about it. He said, "I'm not apologizing for telling the truth." Dylan said, "What truth? Frank literally got you this job." For 1 second, Ray went quiet, like maybe something got through. But then the wall went right back up. Ray said, "He helped, but I did the work. I passed the exam. I earned the spot." That sentence is so familiar to me it makes my skin itch. He helped, but I did the work. That's the story he tells himself so he never has to feel like he owes anyone anything. Dylan wasn't done. He told Ray, "You studied for that exam at your girlfriend's table 3 nights a week for over a year, and you called her nobody at a barbecue. You're doing the same thing again." Ray's whole expression shifted into something hard and tight. He said, "Don't bring her into this. That's different." Dylan said, "It's the exact same thing, and everybody can see it except you." Ray didn't respond. He stood up, grabbed his hard hat, and walked back toward the job site without another word. After that day, Ray completely shut Dylan out. He stopped sitting with him at lunch. He started eating alone in his truck. He'd show up at the start of his shift, clock in, do his hours, and leave. The review was 3 weeks away, and he still had no sponsor. Then Ray did something that showed me, clearly and completely, that he had not changed. He texted me. Not from his own number because I had blocked that months ago. He used some friend's phone. The message said, "Hey, it's Ray. I know things ended weird, but I have a big test coming up for work, and I was wondering if you could help me study like we used to. I'll buy dinner." I read it 3 times. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't say he missed me. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just needed something. 2 years and 3 months of cooking for him, driving him, paying his bills, sitting up with him until midnight, and in his mind, all of that added up to someone he could text from a borrowed phone and ask for one more favor. "I'll buy dinner." Like a meal at some restaurant was a fair trade for what he took from me. I didn't respond. I set my phone face down on the couch cushion and went back to what I was watching. I showed the text to my friend Eduardo, and he just shook his head and said, "Delete it and don't think about it again." So I did. Dylan called me a week later. He told me Ray had gone to 3 different senior electricians at the company over the past week and asked each of them directly to sponsor his apprenticeship review. All 3 said no. The first was a guy who had worked with Frank for over a decade. He looked at Ray and said, "Frank's the best mentor in this company and you spit in his face. Why would I invest my time in someone like that?" The second one said he didn't have the bandwidth, which Dylan said was probably just being polite. The third one was the most direct. He looked at Ray and said, "I asked Frank about you. He told me what happened. I'm not interested." 3 closed doors, and everyone closed because of the same thing. Frank didn't need to badmouth Ray to anyone. All Frank had to do was tell the truth when people asked. After the 3rd rejection, Ray went to his supervisor and asked if the review could be postponed. His supervisor said, "The review schedule is set by the apprenticeship board. If you don't have a journeyman sponsor by the date, you're removed from the track." Ray asked if there was any other path. The supervisor said, "Find a sponsor or find another company." Dylan said Ray walked out and stood in the hallway just looking at the floor. Then he went back to work like nothing had happened, except everything had. The following Monday, he showed up looking like he hadn't slept all weekend. Within the first few hours, he forgot to label a breaker panel. Later that day, he left a junction box uncovered, both basic safety steps. His supervisor pulled him in and said, "I don't know what's going on with you, but this job site isn't the place to figure it out. Get it together, or I'll have to document a pattern. The reversed polarity, the 3 code violations. Now 2 more careless mistakes in a single day." Dylan said Ray walked out of that meeting and didn't talk to anyone for the rest of the day. The review was now 10 days away. Dylan told me he overheard Ray on the phone during lunch that week, sitting on a bench outside with his back to the building. He heard Ray say, clear as anything, "These people don't want to see me win. They're all in Frank's pocket." Even now, even after everything, even with every door closed and every bridge burned, Ray could look at a trail of people who had given him everything and convince himself they were the problem. 5 days before the review, Ray went to Frank's house. Dylan wasn't there. But the next morning, Frank told one of the other guys on the crew what happened, and that guy told Dylan before lunch. Frank said Ray showed up on a Sunday evening. Frank was at home, in his own house, on his own time. He opened the door and Ray was on his porch. Frank said, "What are you doing here?" Ray said, "I need to talk to you about the review." Frank said, "You came to my home on a Sunday to talk about your review?" The first thing out of Ray's mouth wasn't, "I'm sorry." The first thing was, "I need something from you." Ray said, "Nobody at the company will sponsor me. You're the only one who can." Frank said, "That's not my problem anymore, Ray." Ray kept pushing. He said, "Come on, Frank. We worked together for months. You know what I can do." Frank stepped out onto the porch and closed his front door behind him. He didn't invite Ray inside. He said, "I know exactly what you can do. I also know exactly what I did for you. And I know what you said about it in a room full of people who respect me. You looked a project manager in the face and told him you taught yourself. I was sitting right there." Ray started to open his mouth. Frank cut him off. "I drove you to job sites on my days off. I reviewed your work on my lunch breaks. I told the hiring manager you were worth the risk. And you sat at that dinner and erased all of it because you wanted to look like you did it alone." Ray said, "I didn't mean it like that." Frank said, "That's exactly how you meant it." Then he said, "I'll tell you something else. I called your old coworker Dylan last month. He told me about your girlfriend, the one who helped you study for your license, the one you told people was nobody." Frank, a man I had never met, knew what Ray did to me. He had called Dylan after the dinner incident, and Dylan told him the truth about the barbecue, about me sitting at my own table for over a year, helping Ray study for the exact license Frank helped him use. Frank connected it instantly because the pattern was obvious to everyone except the person doing it. Ray didn't respond. He just stood there with his mouth closed. Frank looked at him and said, "You've got a pattern, son. People pour into you and you pretend they don't exist. That's not confidence. That's something broken, and I'm not putting my name next to it again." again. Then Frank turned around, opened his front door, walked back into his house, and closed the door behind him. Dylan said the co-worker who heard Frank tell the story said Frank didn't seem angry. He seemed tired. The kind of tired where you realize the person you gave to was never going to see what you gave. Dylan told me Ray sat in his truck in Frank's driveway for 20 minutes after that door closed. He didn't drive away. He didn't call anyone. He didn't get out and knock again. He just sat there. I think those 20 minutes were the closest Ray ever came to actually looking at himself. And then he started the truck and drove away. For one stupid hopeful second, I thought maybe Frank's words did what mine couldn't. Maybe he would call me, not to ask for help, to actually apologize. I let myself believe it for about a day. Then Dylan called and told me what Ray did next, and I let it go for good. The review was in 3 days. Frank had shut the door in his face. Every senior electrician had said no. And instead of sitting with what Frank told him, Ray decided to go over everyone's head. He went straight to the company owner. He requested a meeting 2 days before the review deadline. Dylan said Ray didn't just walk in. He went through the front office, asked the secretary to schedule 15 minutes, and showed up that morning looking cleaner than he had in weeks. Fresh haircut, pressed shirt, boots wiped down. He sat down across from the owner and laid out his case like he was the victim. He told the owner he was being unfairly blocked from the apprenticeship track because of personal politics. He said Frank had a grudge against him and was using his influence to turn the other journeymen against him. He said, "I've done good work here. I passed every test. I've been on time every day. One person's opinion shouldn't end my career." Dylan wasn't in the room, but the door was open part way, and he was working on a panel close enough to hear most of it. The owner let Ray finish. He didn't interrupt. When Ray was done, the owner said, "Frank's been with this company for 19 years. He's trained more apprentices than anyone on staff. When he tells me something about a worker, I listen." Ray said, "With all respect, Frank is exaggerating." Dylan said he heard a drawer open and the sound of something being placed on the desk. The owner had pulled a folder. He said, "I pulled your file this morning after you requested this meeting. You have 3 write-ups in the last 6 weeks. A reversed polarity on a commercial panel, an unlabeled breaker, an uncovered junction box. Your supervisor flagged a pattern of declining performance. Documentation, paper, facts that Ray couldn't shrug off." Ray tried to explain. The owner held up his hand and Ray stopped. The owner said, "I also spoke with Frank this morning. He told me he mentored you personally for 4 months. He told me he recommended you for hire. He told me he brought you to the company dinner as his guest. And he told me that at that dinner, you told a project manager you taught yourself everything you know." Ray said, "That's not exactly what I..." The owner kept going like Ray hadn't spoken. He said, "Frank also told me this isn't the first time you've done this. He said you had a girlfriend who spent over a year helping you pass your licensing exam, and you denied knowing her in front of your friends." When Dylan told me that part, I had to put my hand over my mouth. The truth of what I gave Ray had traveled through Dylan to Frank to the owner of the company where Ray was trying to build his future. I never said a word to any of those people. I never asked anyone to tell my story or fight on my behalf. The truth just moved on its own. That's what truth does when somebody's pattern is big enough that everyone around them can see it. Ray finally spoke. He said, "That's my personal life. That has nothing to do with work. Even now, even sitting in the office of the man who controlled whether his career lived or died." The owner said, "It has everything to do with work. This trade runs on trust. When a journeyman sponsors an apprentice, he's telling everyone on that job site that this person is reliable, teachable, and worth investing in. Not a single journeyman in my company is willing to say that about you. That's not politics. That's a reputation you built yourself. A reputation you built yourself." Ray spent his whole life trying to build a reputation as a self-made man, and the owner looked him in the face and told him he did build something by himself. He just didn't build what he thought he was building. He built a reputation as someone you can't trust. The owner told Ray his apprenticeship would not be renewed. He said Ray could finish out the current pay period doing general labor, but the track to foreman was closed. Ray asked if there was another path. The owner said, "You can reapply in 12 months with a new sponsor recommendation, but I'd suggest you spend that year thinking about why nobody wants to recommend you." Ray stood up. He didn't argue. He walked out of that office, picked up his tools, and finished his shift without saying a single word to anyone. He worked out the rest of his pay period in total silence, and then he was gone. Dylan told me about a month later that Ray had taken a job doing basic wiring for a small contractor across town. Not an apprenticeship, not a track to anything. Just simple work for simple pay. No Frank in his corner. No project manager asking how he was adjusting. Nothing. The career that Frank had built for him. The career that I had helped make possible by sitting at my own table night after night for over a year, quizzing him on codes until we were both so tired we could barely see straight. That career was gone. And it wasn't gone because the company was unfair. It was gone because Ray looked at every person who poured into him and told them they didn't matter. He told me I was nobody at a barbecue. He told a room full of professionals that Frank barely helped him. He told everyone who ever carried him that he carried himself. And eventually, one by one, they believed him. They believed him when he said he didn't need them, so they stopped. And Ray got to find out what doing it all by himself actually looked like. It looked like exactly what he said he built. Nothing.